I discovered my wife mocked our marriage in private chats, so I exposed her humiliation game and ended everything to reclaim my dignity at last, finally. The notification popped up on my laptop screen while I was reviewing quarterly reports. Her social media account was still logged in from when she borrowed my computer last week. What I saw made my stomach drop. A private group chat titled Girl Talk and censored with 43 members. My wife was actively typing. I should not have looked, but something compelled me to scroll up through the recent messages. Update on my bedroom situation, still a complete disaster. He tried again last night, and I swear I have had more exciting experiences at the dentist. The responses came flooding in with laughing emojis and comments. Women I knew, women I had smiled at during neighborhood barbecues and company parties. They were all reading about my most intimate moments, dissected and ridiculed. "Does he still do that thing you mentioned?" Someone named Jessica typed. "Oh my God, yes. Like he is following some manual from 1995. I just lay there counting ceiling tiles now." My jaw tightened as I continued reading. This was not a recent conversation. The messages went back months. She had been broadcasting our private life to dozens of women, turning me into their entertainment. The front door slammed shut. She was home early from her yoga class. I quickly screenshotted several messages and closed the laptop. When she walked into the living room, I was sitting calmly on the couch, hands folded. "You are home early," she said, dropping her yoga mat by the door. "So are you." I studied her face. "How was class?" "Plenty to talk about with the girls." She paused, something flickering in her eyes. "Same as always, what?" "Just curious about what topics come up during your discussions." Her smile faltered slightly. "What is that supposed to mean?" I stood up, keeping my expression neutral. "Nothing at all. I am just interested in your social activities, particularly the ones involving detailed reviews of our marriage." The color drained from her face. She knew. "I do not know what you think you heard or saw, but..." "But what?" I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. "But I should not be concerned that my wife has turned our bedroom into a public discussion forum? That 43 women know intimate details about our relationship that I thought were private?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The confident woman who had been ridiculing me online suddenly looked very small. "It is not what you think. We were just venting. All married women talk about, all married women humiliate their husbands to strangers online." I took a step closer. "All married women reject physical intimacy for months while providing entertainment for their social circles?" Her defensive posture crumbled. "You were not supposed to see that." "No, I was not. But here we are." I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the screenshots. "The question now is, what exactly did you think would happen when I eventually found out?" She stared at the phone, panic creeping into her voice. "You cannot be serious. Those are private conversations." "Private?" I almost laughed. "You made our marriage public entertainment. You lost the right to privacy the moment you decided to broadcast our intimate life to your audience." The woman who had been confidently mocking me to dozens of strangers was now speechless, realizing she had been caught in her own web, and this was just the beginning. She spent the next 2 days walking on eggshells, shooting nervous glances my way whenever she thought I was not looking. I let her stew in the anxiety while I conducted my own investigation. If she wanted to play games, I would learn the rules first. Tuesday evening, while she attended her book club, I accessed her laptop properly. The private group was not her only platform. She had accounts on 3 different forums where married women discussed their relationships. Her username, Disappointed Wife, 2019. My hands tightened around the laptop as I read post after post describing our intimate moments in humiliating detail. She had rated my performance, shared photos of gifts I had given her with sarcastic captions, and even posted about arguments we had had, painting me as some clueless husband who could not satisfy his wife. But the real discovery came when I found her work chat logs. She had been sharing stories about me with her female colleagues during lunch breaks, screenshots of text messages I had sent her, accompanied by her commentary about how needy and pathetic I was. One message thread made my blood boil. He actually tried to plan a romantic weekend last month. Bought candles, wine, the whole cliché setup. I told him I had a headache and watched Netflix instead. The look on his face was priceless. Her colleague responded, "You are evil. But honestly, sounds like he deserves it after that comment he made about your cooking." What comment about her cooking? I had never criticized her cooking. Then I realized she was fabricating stories to justify her behavior, creating a fictional version of me that deserved her contempt. I documented everything, screenshots, timestamps, participant lists. By the time she returned from book club, I had a comprehensive file of her digital betrayal spanning 8 months. She found me in the study casually reading. Working late? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Research project? I replied without looking up. Amazing what you can learn when you know where to look. She hesitated in the doorway. About what? Social dynamics, trust patterns, the psychology of public humiliation. I finally met her eyes. Fascinating subject. Really? Did you know that people who systematically humiliate their partners often escalate their behavior over time? Her face went pale. Are we still talking about your work? Are we? I closed my book deliberately. You tell me. You seem to be quite the expert on relationship dynamics yourself, at least according to your online presence. She took a step back. I already explained about the group chat. It was just harmless venting. Harmless. I stood up slowly. Tell me, was it harmless when you shared details with your work colleagues? Was it harmless when you posted on marriage forums calling yourself Disappointed Wife 2019? Was it harmless when you fabricated stories about me to justify your behavior? Each question hit her like a physical blow. Her confident mask completely shattered. How did you? I never what? Never thought I would find out. Never considered that your harmless venting was actually a coordinated campaign to destroy my reputation. I walked toward her slowly. Or never thought you would have to face consequences. She backed against the doorframe. You are scaring me. Good. You should be scared because, unlike you, I do not need an audience to make my point. I stopped directly in front of her. I prefer a more direct approach. Tears started forming in her eyes. What are you going to do? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm going to teach you about consequences. But do not worry, I will make sure everyone who enjoyed your little show gets a front row seat to the finale. She opened her mouth to speak, but I was already walking past her toward the bedroom. The investigation phase was over. Now it was time to plan her education. The next morning, I did something that caught her completely off guard. I apologized. You are right, I said over breakfast, watching her nearly choke on her coffee. I have been neglecting our relationship. Maybe I have been disappointing. She stared at me like I had grown a second head. What? I have been thinking about what you said about our intimacy issues. Maybe I need to try harder. I buttered my toast casually. I want to work on us. Her relief was pathetic. She actually thought her public humiliation campaign had worked, that I was surrendering to her narrative. Oh, well, I am glad you are open to improvement. Absolutely. In fact, I have been doing some research, learning new techniques. I met her eyes with a sincere expression that masked my true intentions. I would like to try again tonight. She shifted uncomfortably. After months of rejection, she could not exactly say no without looking like the problem. Okay, sure. That evening, I set the stage perfectly. Candles, wine, soft music, all the romantic cliches she had mocked online. But this time, I had an agenda. When we finally made it to the bedroom, I implemented every single technique she had criticized in her posts, but with a precision that stunned her. The amateur moves she had ridiculed online suddenly became masterful when executed properly. Every criticism she had shared with her audience became a roadmap for exactly what she secretly wanted. Her response was immediate and undeniable. The woman who had been faking headaches and counting ceiling tiles was suddenly very engaged, very vocal, very present. Afterward, as she lay breathless beside me, I could see the confusion in her eyes. That was, she started. Different? I suggested helpfully. Yes, very different. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. Where did that come from? Practice makes perfect, I said, running my fingers along her arm. Amazing what you can accomplish when you really pay attention to feedback. She did not catch the implication. Not yet. The next day, while she was at work, I executed phase 2. I created my own social media accounts, but unlike her public humiliation campaign, mine would be strategically targeted. I found the LinkedIn profiles of several women from her work chat group. Professional women who probably would not appreciate knowing their lunch break gossip sessions had been documented. I did not contact them directly. That would come later. For now, I simply gathered intelligence. I also reached out to a few mutual male friends, casually mentioning that my wife had been sharing relationship advice online and that I had learned some interesting things about married women's private conversations. I planted just enough curiosity to ensure they would be paying attention when the real show began. When she came home that evening, I was cooking dinner, her favorite meal. You are in a good mood, she observed, suspicious but pleased. Why would not I be? Last night was incredible, you were incredible. I kissed her cheek as I passed. I feel like we are finally connecting again. She practically glowed with satisfaction. The woman who had been systematically destroying my reputation for months was now basking in the very attention she had been withholding. I am glad, she said, wrapping her arms around me from behind. Maybe we can connect again tonight. I would love that, I replied, mentally cataloging how quickly her tune had changed. But first I have a surprise for you. What kind of surprise? I turned in her arms, smiling genuinely for the first time in months, the kind that brings people together. I thought we could host a little gathering this weekend. Invite some of your friends from the chat group, maybe some colleagues. Her face lit up. Really? You want to socialize with my friends? Of course. I feel like I barely know them despite how much they apparently know about me. I watched her carefully for any sign of awareness, but she was too caught up in her perceived victory to notice the trap. It will be fun to finally meet the women who have been such a big part of your life lately. She kissed me enthusiastically. That sounds perfect. I will start making calls tomorrow. As she headed upstairs to change, I returned to cooking, humming softly. Phase 2 was complete. She was now actively arranging her own public exposure, bringing together all the participants in her humiliation campaign, for what she thought would be a social triumph. The irony was delicious. She had spent months orchestrating my embarrassment in front of strangers. Now she was personally inviting those same people to witness her downfall. Saturday could not come fast enough. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. By 6 o'clock in the evening, our living room was filled with the very women who had been entertainment consumers in my wife's humiliation theater. Jessica from the neighborhood, 3 colleagues from her office, and 5 members of the infamous online chat group. My wife played the perfect hostess, glowing with confidence as she introduced me to women who already knew intimate details about my life. The irony was not lost on me as I shook hands with people who had been reading about my bedroom performance for months. "So, you are the famous husband we have heard so much about," Jessica said with a knowing smile. "Famous?" I raised an eyebrow, playing innocent. I had no idea my reputation preceded me. My wife shot her a warning look, but Jessica was already committed. "Oh, she talks about you all the time in our group chats." "Does she now?" I accepted a glass of wine, noting how several women exchanged glances. All good things, I hope. The room grew slightly tense. My wife forced a laugh. Of course, why would not they be? I waited 20 minutes, letting the wine flow and conversations develop before making my move. The group had naturally segmented into smaller clusters, with my wife holding court near the fireplace, regaling her audience with some story about her day. "You know," I said, addressing the room but looking directly at Jessica. "It is funny how different perspectives can be on the same relationship." Conversation slowed. Several women turned toward me. "What do you mean?" asked Sarah from my wife's office. "Well, take intimacy, for example." I took a casual sip of wine. Some people think communication is key, while others prefer to, shall we say, seek outside opinions on private matters. My wife's laugh became noticeably strained. "Honey, maybe we should—" No, this is fascinating," I continued, warming to my theme. "I have been reading recently about how some people handle relationship challenges by creating public forums for discussion, anonymous ones, of course." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. I could see recognition dawning on several faces. Anonymous forums. Jessica's voice was carefully neutral. "Oh yes, places where people can rate their partner's performance, share intimate details, even fabricate stories to justify their behavior." I paused dramatically. "Of course, they think they are anonymous." My wife had gone completely pale. "I think we should change the subject." "Should we?" I pulled out my phone casually because I find social media psychology absolutely riveting. The way people create online personas, build communities around shared experiences. It is remarkable what you can learn about someone from their digital footprint. I turned to address Jessica directly. "For instance, did you know that private group chats are not actually private if someone screenshots them? Or that forum posts can be traced back to specific users with the right tools?" Jessica's wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. "Take this group called Girl Talk and Censored. Fascinating name, really. 43 members discussing their relationships in explicit detail. The conversations are quite educational. The silence was deafening. My wife looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Or workplace chat logs." I continued, now looking at Sarah and her colleagues. "Amazing how people feel comfortable sharing intimate details about their spouses with co-workers during lunch breaks. Screenshots, ratings, even fabricated stories to make the humiliation seem justified." Sarah actually dropped her wine glass. The crash echoed through the stunned silence. "I am curious," I said, addressing the entire room now. "How does it feel to realize that your participation in someone else's public humiliation campaign has been documented?" That your names, your comments, your reactions are all saved in a very comprehensive file? My wife finally found her voice. Stop, please. Stop what? Having an honest conversation with your friends, the same friends who have been reading about our private life for months. I smiled coldly. I thought you enjoyed sharing intimate details with groups. This is just a different kind of sharing. The exodus began immediately. Jessica mumbled something about needing to leave early. Sarah and her colleagues suddenly remembered urgent appointments. Within minutes, the room that had been full of confident women was nearly empty. My wife stood frozen by the fireplace, tears streaming down her face. How could you do that to me? She whispered. I set down my wine glass and walked toward her slowly. How could I do that to you? That is rich coming from someone who spent 8 months systematically destroying my reputation for entertainment. It was not like that. Was it? Because I have documentation that says otherwise. Screenshots, timestamps, participant lists. Would you like me to read some of your more creative posts out loud? She sank into a chair, the weight of her exposure finally hitting her. What do you want from me? Nothing, I replied simply. I do not want anything from you anymore. I just wanted to make sure everyone who enjoyed the show got to see the finale. The woman who had been confidently humiliating me online for months was now sitting alone in our empty living room, finally understanding what public humiliation actually felt like. And this was still just the beginning. Monday morning brought the consequences I had been orchestrating. My wife's phone buzzed incessantly with messages, not the supportive kind she was used to receiving from her online audience. They are all asking if what you said is true, she said, staring at her screen with red-rimmed eyes. Jessica wants to know if you really have screenshots of our private conversations. Do I? I asked from behind my newspaper, not bothering to look up. You know you do. Her voice cracked. Please do not show them to anyone else. I folded the paper down, meeting her desperate gaze. Funny how the rules change when you are the one being exposed, is not it? That afternoon, while she was at work trying to manage the fallout, I made my next move. I had prepared a detailed presentation, professional quality, complete with timestamps and conversation threads. But this was not going to her friends or co-workers. This was going somewhere that would truly matter. Her mother's email address was easy to find. The woman who had raised my wife deserved to know exactly what kind of person her daughter had become. I attached a carefully curated selection of screenshots. Nothing too explicit, but damning enough to show the pattern of systematic humiliation and public mockery. The email was simple. I thought you should know how your daughter discusses her marriage in public forums. This represents 8 months of documented behavior. I felt you deserved to understand why our marriage is ending. By evening, my wife's phone was ringing non-stop. Her mother, her sister, even her grandmother had apparently been brought into the conversation. My family is furious with me. Mom says she is ashamed of how I have been behaving. She wants me to call you and apologize. She sobbed when she got home. Apologize? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. What exactly would you apologize for? The months of public humiliation, the fabricated stories, the systematic destruction of my reputation for your entertainment, all of it. I am sorry for all of it. She was practically begging now. I will delete everything. I will leave all the groups. I will make it right. Make it right. I stood up from the couch, towering over her. You think this is about making it right? You think an apology fixes 8 months of betrayal? She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. What do you want me to do? I will do anything. Anything. I tilted my head, considering. Interesting choice of words. Because there is something you can do. Hope flickered in her eyes. What? I walked to my laptop and opened a prepared document. You are going to write a public post in that chat group. You are going to explain to all 43 members exactly what you have been doing, why it was wrong, and what the consequences have been. Her face went white. I cannot do that. They will never speak to me again. They are already not speaking to you. Jessica has not responded to your texts since Saturday. Sarah and her colleagues are avoiding you at work. Your online forum friends are questioning everything you have posted. I turned the laptop toward her. This is your chance to tell the truth for once. She stared at the blank document. What if I refuse? Then I send the full documentation to your human resources department. Did you know that using company computers for personal harassment campaigns is grounds for termination? Because I checked your employee handbook. The blood drained from her face completely. You would not try me. You spent months destroying my reputation for entertainment. I have no problem returning the favor through official channels. Her hands shook as she approached the laptop. What do you want me to write? The truth, every detail, how you fabricated stories, how you violated my privacy, how you turned our marriage into public entertainment, and most importantly, how it felt when the tables turned. She began typing slowly, tears falling onto the keyboard. As she wrote, her online persona crumbled completely. The confident woman who had been mocking me to strangers was now publicly confessing to systematic betrayal. When she finished, her finger hovered over the send button. Once I post this, everyone will know. Everyone already knows. The only question is whether you want to control the narrative or let me do it for you. She pressed send. Within minutes, the responses started flooding in. But instead of support, she received exactly what she had been giving me for months: public judgment and humiliation. The woman who had built her confidence by tearing me down in public forums was now experiencing the full weight of social rejection. The friends who had enjoyed her stories were disgusted by her behavior. The colleagues who had participated in mocking me were now distancing themselves from her. "Are you happy now?" she whispered, reading the brutal responses. I closed the laptop and looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time in months. Happy? No. But satisfied? Absolutely. She had created this situation with 8 months of calculated cruelty. Now she was learning that actions have consequences, and some things cannot be undone with tears and apologies. The reckoning was complete, but her education was far from over. The next 2 weeks were a master class in social consequences. Her public confession had triggered an avalanche of accountability that reached every corner of her life. At work, the human resources investigation I had threatened became unnecessary. Her colleagues had already distanced themselves so completely that she ate lunch alone every day. The women who had once gathered around her desk for gossip sessions now avoided eye contact in the hallways. "They act like I am contagious," she told me one evening, her voice hollow. "Even the receptionist will not make small talk anymore." "Imagine that," I replied, not looking up from my book. "People do not trust someone who broadcasts private conversations for entertainment. Who could have predicted such a thing?" Her online presence had completely collapsed. The chat group she dominated for months had either removed her or dissolved entirely. Her forum accounts were flooded with criticism from members who realized they had been manipulated by fabricated stories. But the real devastation came from her family. Her mother had called 3 more times, each conversation leaving my wife more broken than the last. Her sister had canceled their weekly coffee dates indefinitely. Even her grandmother, who never said a harsh word to anyone, had left a voicemail expressing her disappointment. "Grandma says she does not recognize the person I have become." She sobbed after the latest family call. She asked how I could betray my husband's trust so completely. I finally looked up from my reading. "And what did you tell her?" "Nothing. What could I say? That I thought it was funny, that I enjoyed the attention." She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. "I lost myself somewhere along the way." "No," I corrected firmly. "You did not lose yourself. You revealed yourself. There is a difference." Friday afternoon, I came home to find her packing boxes in the bedroom. For a moment, I thought she was finally taking initiative. Then I saw what she was packing: my clothes. "What exactly do you think you are doing?" She looked up, eyes red and swollen. "I figured you would want me to leave. I was packing your things so you could move somewhere else while I figure out what to do." I actually laughed. "You think I am the one leaving after what you put me through? You think I am going to be inconvenienced further? But this is my house too." "It was," I interrupted. "It was your house too when you were a wife who respected her husband. Now you are just someone who violated every principle of marriage for social media likes." I took the clothes out of the box and hung them back up methodically. "You have until Sunday to find somewhere else to live. I will be generous and let you take your personal belongings. Where am I supposed to go? My family will not speak to me. My friends hate me. I cannot afford a place on my own." That sounds like a consequence problem, not a me problem. I continued hanging up my shirts with deliberate calm. "You spent 8 months systematically destroying our relationship for entertainment. Did you think there would not be a price?" Saturday morning, Jessica knocked on our door. I answered, curious to see what brought my wife's former confidant to our doorstep. "Is she here?" Jessica asked, looking uncomfortable. "She is upstairs packing. Are you here to help her move?" Jessica shook her head. "I came to apologize to you. I mean, what we did, participating in those conversations, it was wrong." "Yes, it was. We never thought about how it would feel if our husbands found out. We just got caught up in the gossip and you enjoyed watching someone else's marriage get torn apart for your entertainment." I finished. "At least you are honest about it now." She winced. "For what it is worth, most of us feel terrible about it. We have all deleted those screenshots and left the group chats. Good for you. Unfortunately, recognition of wrongdoing does not undo the damage." She nodded miserably and left without even asking to see my wife. Sunday arrived with clear skies and a sense of finality. My wife loaded her car with 3 boxes and 2 suitcases, everything that remained of her life here. "This is not over," she said as she stood by her car. "We can work through this. Couples therapy, counseling, whatever it takes." I stood on the porch, completely unmoved. Therapy works when both people want to save something worth saving. You killed whatever we had when you decided public humiliation was more entertaining than private respect. "I made a mistake," she started. No, I cut her off. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something thoughtless in an argument. What you did was systematic betrayal carried out over months for your personal entertainment. That is not a mistake. That is a character revelation." She got in her car, tears streaming down her face. As she backed out of the driveway, I felt nothing but relief. That evening, I sat in my living room, truly my living room now, with a glass of wine and my book. The silence was perfect. No more walking on eggshells. No more wondering what private moment would become tomorrow's entertainment. No more sharing my life with someone who had no respect for it. My phone buzzed with a text from a mutual friend. "Heard about the separation. How are you holding up?" I typed back. "Better than I have in months. Turns out removing toxic people from your life is surprisingly liberating." She had wanted to play games with my dignity, my privacy, and my trust. She had learned that some games have consequences she never anticipated. The woman who had spent months making me the punchline of her social circle was now learning what real isolation felt like. I had won more than just this conflict. I had reclaimed my self-respect and proven that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. She had gambled our entire marriage for social media entertainment and lost everything. The house was quiet, peaceful, and finally mine again. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Our story has come to an end. If you have made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I have selected 2 other videos for you that I am sure you will enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I will be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.